Hi, everyone that's joined so far. Thank you for being here for session 5. As usual, I'm going to wait just 3 or 4 minutes for the numbers to go up a little bit, and then I'll kick us off with the intro, and we'll go from there. So give us about 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll start. Awesome. I think we'll kick it off and wait for more to join as we go. Can I get a thumbs up if everyone can hear me? Awesome. Perfect. Thank you all for joining us. We are officially in the 3rd month of the Biotech Commercialization Series. For those of you who signed up on our previous registration, we've sent out a midway feedback survey to your emails. Please help us keep track of this and fill out the feedback. It helps us secure funding for the following years and for improving this as we go. So we would really appreciate your support there. We will send a reminder after this session with the feedback form link again, just so that you have it fresh in your inbox. But today kicks off the first of the August sessions. Sorry, John T, you said, when do you need the feedback by? Only by the end of the month, pretty much. So this is our midway feedback form. We'll keep sending you reminders until most of you have filled it out. And then towards the end of the series, in about November, we'll send out another one. And again, towards the start of next year, we'll send our final close off. So just keep an eye out for those that come through. We're trying to keep them super simple. But as usual, send us suggestions via email if you have anything else that you want to recommend. We really appreciate the engagement from you guys. So today kicks off the first session of the August webinars, which is all about funding. Today, we will be talking about early stage and kind of institutional support. So what support do you get through your academic institutes? We'll be hearing from the TTOs and then from Wayne Stocks, who I'm sure you all know from the UTF. And then the next session in 2 weeks on the 19th of August will be a VC deep dive with a few of the local VCs. So we hope that you guys draw a lot of value from these sessions. I know this is what most people were interested to hear about. I'm going to kick us off with a bit of an intro and then hand it over to our first guest speakers. So I just ran through this, but just to mention some of the guest speakers that will be joining us, we have Anna Casanova from UWC TTO, as well as Sabri Marais from Innovators, the Stellenbosch University TTO. Unfortunately, we couldn't get a UCT representative, but I'll mention how we're going to account for that a little bit later. After Anna and Sabri have given a bit of an intro and run through how they support translation of research in their relevant universities, we will go into a bit of a question and answer session. So as usual, please ask questions in the group chat throughout, and I will read them on screen. But if you have longer questions, wait until the end and you can join in on a discussion. We'll have a break only at 11 for about 10 minutes, and then Wayne will join us for the second half. And again, we'll have questions at the end. Awesome. So I thought it would be nice to do a little bit of a zoom out for those of you who have stuck with us through all the sessions. Thank you. We really appreciate it. We hope that you are getting some value from this, and we hope that this leads on to expanding your network. Zooming out and looking at where we are right now, in June, we kicked off with some founder insights and really speaking about market-driven research and how to get that kind of commercialization or translational mindset going. July, we went into the importance of your team and refining your idea, as well as company structuring basics with Adrian Demise. And today we kick off our funding segment. Looking forward, we'll still be doing intellectual property, where we will be joined by IP attorneys. Then we go into regulations, regulatory pathways, and compliance. For that session, we would really appreciate your feedback. I think part of our feedback form that we have sent to you asks you what industry you're really interested in, what regulatory bodies you'd really like to speak to, so we can get the right guest speakers on for you. So if you haven't already, just let us know, pop us an email, and we'll try and get the right people on screen. November, we speak about pitching, investor readiness, and storytelling. And then we'll have a few events leading up to next year's pitching opportunity in March 2027. So I think it's really nice to see the roadmap. Again, suggestions for anything in between are always welcome. And a little bit of a framing for today. So as I mentioned, we'll be speaking about more of the early stage support. And I think we're trying to kind of paint a picture of what this funding pathway looks like and where you can access this kind of support at what time. Obviously, in academia, it's very much grant-based, so all of the scientific research will be done on public or philanthropic funding. And then how do you move along that pipeline? So if you have research that you want to translate from your institution, moving through to looking at your university IP and how you'll be translating that with your tech transfer office is really important. Understanding what support is available at your university and through your TTOs. And then following on from that, where else can you access funding to move through this translation gap? And that's where the UTF comes in, and Wayne will explain how they work with all the local universities and how they're funding university technology. And then hopefully in the next session on the 19th, we'll cover a little bit about the early stage VC landscape and hear about kind of the pre-seed and seed investing. So why is this session kind of important? We recognize that a lot of the audience are all postgraduate students or postdocs or early stage researchers, and most of you are based at universities or have graduated recently from universities. So we think it's really important to really bring the TTOs into this conversation. They've been doing a lot of hard work in encouraging more entrepreneurial pursuits, in translating more research from university. They've been under a lot of pressure, and I think they're doing amazing work. But what we've realized through a lot of our university showcases is that many postgraduate and postdoc students have never engaged with their tech transfer office, nor did they really know who or how to contact them. So if you are working on research at a university that you would like to translate, or would like to explore commercializing in some way, it's essential that you look at who owns the IP, how your university plays a role in this, and who can support you in that process. So we're kind of just showing you who's behind the door and which doors to knock on, and hopefully that'll allow you to take the conversation off screen and explore some more support options. Awesome. So to introduce our guest speakers for the first section, I did mention we'll be speaking to Anna and Sabri. In a second, I'll introduce Anna on screen. She's the director of the Technology Transfer Office at UWC. And Sabri Murray has a lot of experience both at UCT and Stellenbosch, but he is currently the Technology Transfer Specialist at Innovators in Stellenbosch University. I mentioned we were unable to get a UCT representative. Unfortunately, a lot of their team is on leave or unavailable today. However, if you are from UCT and would like to hear more from your TTO, I can either put you in contact directly, or we can have a follow-on session that will be recorded and sent to you with the UCT research contracts and innovation. Awesome. I'll introduce Wayne after the break. First, let's kick off with Anna for the first section. I'm going to get Anna on screen in a second, and one moment. There we go. Awesome. So, Roddy, if you can pop Anna on screen. There we go. Hi, Anna. How are you?
Hi. Hello. Can you all see me?
Yes, I think we can. Can you give a thumbs up if you can all hear and see Anna? There we go.
Sorry.
Awesome. So, Anna, I'm going to let you give a little bit more of an intro to yourself and UWC TTO, and then you can kick us off.
Super. Thank you very much. Let me share my screen, and please let me know if you can see it.
Yeah, I can see it. Thumbs up. Anyone? There we go. Yeah, looks good.
Super. So I'm going to kick off. Please write any questions on the chat. I can't see any of you. I can't see Hannah right now because I'm sharing. So I'll just follow hearing cues. I want to tell you a little bit about innovation and technology transfer at the University of the Western Cape. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Ana Casanueva, and I've got a PhD in molecular and cell biology, so I do have a life sciences background. I've been a researcher. I've been in the lab. I was a postdoc. I then moved on to becoming a research manager, and then thought I needed something different. And so I also have a postgraduate diploma in management and business administration, which is a mini MBA, tiny MBA. And I've been in the R&D innovation space for the last 15 years or so. And in the last 6 years, I've been heading up the Technology Transfer Office at UWC. Now, the TTO at UWC, we've got our mission. What do we do? Blah, blah, blah. But really, the core is we support researchers to transfer the UWC research output. So you're doing research, any output that has value in socioeconomic markets. So I highlighted that in red because we transfer those research outputs to socioeconomic markets. So we don't transfer it to another academic institution for academic purposes. It has to be out there onto market, but they also have to add value, create value for the end user, customer, etc. I'm just popping this in. I'm not going to play this video. This is more, I'm guessing you're going to get these slides, so you'll have this as a reference. If you want to see a little video on the UWC TTO, you can click on that link. But who are we? So this is the team. I am very, very aware of the gender disparity, but at the moment, that's the way it goes. We are a core team of 7 at the moment. So leading the team is Aisha and myself. And then we have 3 specialists, 2. So Tsepi and Mashudu are within the tech transfer space. And then Monique is in the research contracts management space. So she supports the TTO every now and then. And then we've got Njabulo Kubeka, who's our tech transfer officer, and he's also a specialist in bioprospecting. And Oko Luana, who's our admin person, and she actually runs the office. So I want to run to if you are doing UWC research and you are interested in taking this research out of the university into a market because it's actually adding value to someone, in other words, commercialization, there is a path. It seems like it's a very follow-on path, linear path, but it's actually not. We can start anywhere from 1 to 6 and move backwards, etc. If you're not at the moment doing research at UWC, but you are interested in support from the UWC TTO, we are always quite happy to give advice. We have a couple of startups who are actually not doing, commercializing UWC research, but we're still working with them. But at the end of the day, to access this full set of support, you would need to eventually either collaborate with UWC, etc., to have access to some of this. The advice is free. The other activities, you would have to have some link to UWC. So I'm going to go sequentially. Even though sometimes we start at number 6, we get seed funding for the research to be commercialized, and then we move into number 1, etc. But I'm just going to start from number 1 as if things follow the normal pathway. So ideally, sooner or later, you are going to have to engage with us. So I think the most important is come and talk to us at any time. And I would say as soon as possible. You don't need to wait for the R&D to be done, for the proof of concept to be in place, or the proof of principle to come and talk to us. Because we might actually brainstorm a little bit around, okay, so but what are you looking at? Who would be your end user? So what do you really need to prove first, etc. So I would say if you are thinking of doing research for commercialization, come and talk to us anytime. Also, about 2 to 3 times a year, we have a 1-day R&D to market course, and that's specifically for our researchers to give them a little bit of an understanding of what should you think about if you're going to commercialize your research, other than the research doing R&D. But have you looked at who is your end user? How do you get access to them? Which stakeholders might you need, etc. So contact us to know when is that next course. It's free. If you're already busy doing R&D, you already have your proof of principle, maybe even your proof of concept, then there is the unfortunate paperwork that needs to be done. So we do need to fill in a disclosure form, but we do assist you with that. And it's really the information that you would need to give us or have at hand to fill in this form is, what is your innovation? What are you trying to solve? What problem are you trying to solve? What stage of development are you? Who has funded it up until now? Those type of things. But we walk that road with you. So the moral of this story is please contact us as soon as possible. Let us know you're interested in this and we can support you already at the beginning. It's a super easy email to remember. It's TTO@ and then uwc.ac.za. Now, let's say you've now engaged with us, you've got proof of principle, we fill in this form, and really what this form is, it allows the TTO to have a very quick assessment of what is the socioeconomic value of this innovation? What is the market potential? Who are your users or customers? At what stage are you at, etc. So you as a researcher can help us by already starting to think about that and giving us as much information as you've got. We also look at your intellectual property. So what are the assets? What research assets do you have? Do you have just data, which would be, an asset, but how is that protected in a way? Do you have something that's patentable? Is it perhaps a medical device and there might be a specific design to it? Is it copyright? Do you need a trademark, etc.? So what we do is we look at all the information you've given us on the technology. We do a prior art search, which means we look at what's already known in the public domain. You can also help us by doing that. We can also guide you on how to do that. And then we assess what intellectual property assets are available and what would be the best way to protect it. If there is a socioeconomic value and potential, even if there's nothing to protect, we go ahead. So again, contact us. And now officially, if we wanted to follow the pathway, is you now have entered into the TTOs commercialization portfolio. Okay, so now your project falls within our portfolio and we now have access to certain things. And what it is we can now file for protection and use resources for that. We've got funding for early stage innovation development, and we also support the commercialization. So I'm just going to go stepwise through that. And this is really, I would say, where the fun begins, at least for us at the TTO, and one hopes for you as well. So when it comes to IP protection, we would sit with you, we would work out an IP protection strategy. Do we need to protect something? Is something patentable? Is nothing patentable, but we have a lot of know-how? Do we perhaps need to frame it and have some kind of trademark? If it's maybe a medical device, a trademark would be quite useful, etc. We then engage with the IP attorneys. We do include you in that engagement. And then UWC covers all the costs of any protection as well as the management. And that happens throughout the journey of the IP protection. Then a very important part is if you're now, let's say you're at proof of principle, we now need proof of concept before we engage the next stage of funders. We are quite lucky at UWC that the TTO has access to proof of concept funding. It's also known sometimes as seed funding. It's anything between 200,000 to 1.5 million rand. And this is really to either do proof of concept or prototype development, some trials. It's a whole lot of activities. If you've done TRLs, it's anything between TRL 3 to TRL 6, 7. Yeah, for the youngsters, yes. And the nice thing about that is that we have access to that funding directly. So the TTO at the moment holds that funding. We still have to go through the funder. So applications are submitted to the funder who makes the decision, but the money is already at UWC. So it speeds up things tremendously. We help you with that application. We have a committee that looks at them, prioritizes them, and then the funder says yes, no, etc. So that is a really nice pot of money that is relatively quick to access. When it comes to larger than 1.5 million, and that's usually past TRL 4-5, we don't have funding ourselves, but the TTO will help you to apply for such funding to other funders. So we walk the road with you. We help you with the application. If you are successful and get the funding, we actually support you in getting that project done. And then what we also do is we've got an extensive network of stakeholders. So we already know, do you need to start talking to regulatory experts, service providers of any kind, regulatory authorities? Do you need anyone to do some quick prototype development or prototype testing? So we've got quite an extensive network, and we walk that road with you. We help you with the service level agreements with those providers, etc. So we take you through that journey. You do the innovation development, but we are there throughout the process. And then again, imagining this is all linear, we have now developed a certain prototype. We sit together and we develop a commercialization strategy. So what is the best strategy to get this out there into that socioeconomic market? And in your case, my guess is you're probably thinking, spin out, I want to become an entrepreneur, I want to take this myself, etc. So the TTO helps you throughout that process to put together that business case. You need to write a business plan. You do it, you have to do it if you're going to be the entrepreneur, but we are supporting you, advising you, helping you, giving you ideas. We help you with any legal documents that you might need within your spin out. All types of advice, and again, networking with the relevant stakeholders, including UTF and other funders. We also obviously are involved in doing the licensing, so from UWC to the spin-out, or if spin-out is not what you want to do, to another relevant licensee, etc. So basically, this is the process. It is not linear. What often happens is the researcher comes to us and says, hey, I've got this really cool thing. And we're like, oh, you know what? You should apply for seed funding. Come. And we start at number 6. And then you start applying, you're successful. And then we say, okay, let's quickly do that IP disclosure form. Let's do a very quick socioeconomic assessment, IP protection, and then we move forward from there. So basically just come speak to us, send us an email. If you're doing UWC research that you want it to be commercialized, if you're not doing UWC research, but you want our support, send us an email anyway. And if you want access to these type of funds, then you would need to collaborate with UWC to get access to those funds. Yeah. So that's it from me. Nice and short. And if there are any questions, let me know. I'm going to stop sharing.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Anna. And I want to highlight that, I mean, obviously, the first thought that a lot of people have is looking for that initial pot of funding, right? The money to get them going. But the support that most of the TTOs offer goes far beyond that. And even though they might not directly be financial, as in getting a seed investment, a lot of the help comes in with that legal support and painting out that whole roadmap and seeing where they can kind of help with all of the expenses that come with starting up the company. So thank you for that overview. I think it extends quite a nice overview of the general technology transfer process, although it might be specific for each university. But opening up to some quick questions before we move over to Sabri. If anyone has questions specifically for Anna, you can put them in the chat now. Otherwise, after Sabri's section, we can get a few more. Rodrigue has also put the UWC TTO URL in the chat. So if you want to go over to their website and check out a little bit more or reach out to them directly, you can go there. Cool. But while we wait for questions to come in, thank you, Anna. If you don't mind hanging around with us until the end at about 11, we're going to switch over to Sabri. Rodrigue, if you can put him on stage. Awesome. Hi, Sabri. How are you?
Hi, I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
I think let's kick off with your section. I think it's quite nice that Anna gave a very good overview of the general process and how UWC works. You can chat to us a little bit about Stellenbosch, and I know that you also have previous experience at UCT, and you're very well versed in this whole process with years of experience. So kick us off, give us a bit of an intro, and then you can take us through the Stellenbosch process.
Cool. As a very famous person once said, can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, awesome. I need to get home first. Give me a second. We just go to the first slide and then share.
While we wait for Sabri's slide, I just want to address a question that came in. So Anna asked, I think a common question might be what the conversation looks like to determine what percentage shares the university hold in the spin-out company. I'm going to save that question to the end when we bring Anna on screen so that you can both answer from both of your perspectives. But thank you, Sander, for the question. You can go ahead.
Cool. Okay, cool. So I assume you can see my slides?
Yeah, we're good. We're getting thumbs up.
Cool. So hello, everyone. I'm Sabri Marais. I'm a tech transfer specialist at Stellenbosch University's Innovators. I'm going to share with you basically what we do and how the Innovators environment is structured and where the technology transfer office effectively fits in with the Stellenbosch University ecosystem, the commercialization ecosystem. I'm also going to touch on some of the resources and programs that we effectively have at Innovus to support the technology transfer, commercialization, and entrepreneurship journey. We're very fortunate to be a university that's quite privileged. It's an extensive university that's very well known, as well as it's got resources and people available to assist researchers to apply the technologies and commercialize them as well. In terms of our structure, the Innovus ecosystem has the technology transfer office over here, which is the office that I'm part of. Let me just do the laser point over here. Within the tech transfer office, we've got a dedicated team focused on company support and administration, which alleviates a lot of the burden of, due diligence, governance, companies establishment, and that sort of thing. For your information, we also have a division that looks at copyright and trademarks and short courses, which is an interesting outlet because some of our researchers actually want to commercialize the know-how, the expertise by setting up a short course for industry. And then we've got this very special Suncom environment that deals with things like residential service and the botanical gardens and that sort of thing, right? We have a company that's wholly owned by the university called US Enterprises. And all of the equity that we hold as a university in our spin-out companies is held by US Enterprises as a separate spin-out company. The Launch Lab and the Martis Gymnasium are two of the very the functional environments that also are part of US Enterprises. The Launch Lab is where we run a lot of our entrepreneurial support, and it's got an environment in it that also supports the commercialization of biotech technologies. And so this is an entire ecosystem effectively that we run, and it's very complementary with one another as well. Okay. Specifically about the tech transfer office and our function, we're effectively an instrument within the university, very similar to Anna's office within UWC that focuses on the identification, protection, and commercialization of research outputs from the university, right? And we're there to provide that service to researchers and postgraduates as a means of, facilitating the tech transfer and the commercialization, working with and alongside the researchers. We also try to provide access to new knowledge and expertise to help drive the innovation through the research process. We facilitate contracted services and consultancy services as well. In case, like I said earlier on, the route to commercialization is through consultancy. All of our staff here at the TTO have a background in working companies. We work very closely with our spin-out companies. We also have experience in multinationals, startups. So we really understand the issues around that businesses and deep tech businesses in particular face when commercializing their technology. A lot of the staff, we primarily have scientific backgrounds. I've got an MSc in molecular and cell biology, and I've been working on a number of various technologies across the ecosystem, from space technologies to robotics, right through to biotech, various sorts of biotechnologies as well. The other thing that we do is we liaise between the National IP Management Office and other government sectors as well. So if, for example, we get to a situation where we are licensing to a local company or international company, we effectively drive that process to get permissions for the license if needed, so that the academics and the researchers don't have to do it. And, we really want to be the first point of contact also for Stellenbosch University researchers and postgrads, so that we can start the conversation around, what their interests, their research interests are, how they foresee the technology or the commercialization of that opportunity as well. So briefly, we support the research and entrepreneurial development, protect IP and manage that on behalf of the university and on behalf of the academics and postgrads. We facilitate and drive the tech transfer and licensing, and then support spin-out companies as well. And how we do this is effectively through providing guiding and mentoring and informing our projects and our researchers around commercialization. We try and actively find industry partners and academics. We find that a lot of our spin-out companies are actually doing quite a bit of work with the university and academics to facilitate a greater pipeline and commercialization. And we're very fortunate in that a lot of the postgrads who complete their work within the university end up, finding jobs at the businesses that and the spin-out companies that we support and create. The other thing that we do as TTO staff is that we give academics and postgrads access to our extensive networks as well, right? So sometimes when we don't have the answer to a particular question or perspective around the market, we are really trying to solve access and commercialization hurdles. And then that conversation, we can facilitate those conversations with the pharma companies that we know, with the manufacturers, the guys who are developing hardware in South Africa as well as internationally as well. So we're very good at also doing due diligence, and I'll speak to that a bit later through the process that we effectively use when you engage with us, okay? As a means of informing how to effectively commercialize and bring things to the market. And we provide free access to experienced patent attorneys. We've been working with them for a very, very long time, and we draw into their expertise as well in trying to guide us in how to manage the IP effectively, what to protect, what not to protect, and that sort of thing. And then, as mentioned, we work with a launch lab to incubate and form the companies as well. So it's a big thing of what we do. We've got that waxed effectively, right? So a very high level of the process that we'd like to follow. Many times through our engagement with our researchers and postgrads, and even with engaging with the OneBio team, we may find certain researchers and students who have great ideas and concepts, and we really want to engage with you even at the idea and conceptualization phase, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a completed product. It doesn't have to be a completed concept, that's ready for the market. But we come in early enough, and then we assist and help guide through that process as well. And then we do the evaluation, okay? We help with prior art searches. We understand the marketability and the positioning of a technology relative to its competitors to understand what the differences are, okay? So a lot of the skills that you'll be getting in the OneBio course, okay, is things that we apply ourselves quite frequently in the evaluation of our projects, and we do that with our postgraduates and our researchers as well. And then part of that is understanding the technology and the landscape, because, it is the ideas, the researchers and postgrads ideas from the university that we're trying to commercialize, and we'll do that with one another, right? So then we will come up with an appropriate IP management and protection strategy, right? And investigate, the various commercialization routes to market, which makes sense when, and it's very collaborative in the process. And then importantly, when our researchers and students are engaging with industry or they want to facilitate material transfer through the collaborations, we can facilitate that with them as well. And then that informs effectively how the IP is used and commercialized, and whether a spin-off or startup company is effectively warranted given what we've learned through the evaluation. We have a disclosure form as well. It's effectively a means for you to, tell us about your idea. The online process allows you to upload any of your documents and information that we would also, put through the technology evaluation, effectively develop a technology development plan with you if need be. We're assessing the markets, we're assessing the intellectual property, and then coming up with a funding plan as well, right? And what we're trying to work towards is establishing this entrepreneurial university where, the university has the ability to innovate, recognize, and create opportunities and take risks and respond to effective challenges as well, whether they be, related to climate change, whether it be new technologies and tools for research, commercialization, right? And where we were able to sell, service in the knowledge industry as such, okay? Universities are natural incubators that support academics and the technicians and the students basically through this process, right? So this is the entrepreneurial ecosystem that we've established here, where we take things from idea, we plan appropriately, we support the team, and then we take them to business and success. Apologies that, it's quite a busy slide, but we try to capture everything that we do basically in the one slide. As mentioned before, let me just activate the, there we go. This is where I stay and I work in the tech transfer office, but then we have, the Stellenbosch enterprises that we can tap into for resources. We also have the launch lab where we effectively can incubate and teach and educate a lot of our students and researchers. At the moment, the launch lab actually has a program called Health Connect, where we're taking entrepreneurs through pitch preparation and, evaluating their market opportunity and their positioning as well. And this is going to culminate in an event called Health Connect, where industry players, funders are all going to effectively come to Stellenbosch, and the people who have gone through the Launch Lab Health Connect will be able to pitch their ideas and seek funding, market entry, expertise, you name it, right? And the technologies and the opportunities they range from deep tech diagnostics right through to someone who's developing rooibos skincare for animals and pets. Okay. So, we're quite diverse, and the kind of resources that we have are quite diverse as well, right? I'm just going to speed through this. I've spoken about that. The other thing that I want to focus on, okay, is that we also have significant spin-out information guides on our website. We've got an e-book that you can access off our website. We've developed something called the Instant Startup Toolkit, okay, which is a systematic way that people with ideas and commercial ideas can go through to try and put the different elements of the commercial opportunity together that will eventually inform how they're going to commercialize, and we work with our people through them. The other thing that we have is a translational fellow program where if you are a postgrad, a postdoc, and you need to focus 100% on your commercial opportunity, there's potentially funding available through our Translational Fellow Program, where we can support you to focus on that commercial opportunity for about a year, right? And then the Stellenbosch network is a network of companies with paid membership and who organize events like the Health Connect that's coming along, right? I'm going to skip that because I've mentioned that already. The other thing that I just want to speak about quickly is the funds for entrepreneurs. So we are really, really lucky to work with the University Technology Fund. Wayne is going to present later on as well. But the other thing that we do is we facilitate access to funding through the Tier Seed Fund, as UWC also does. But we also have our own funds at Stellenbosch University that people can apply for the Stellenbosch University Pre-Seed Fund. This allows them to pay for the R&D, technology development, and it's a fairly seamless process. You can get your money in about 4 weeks after applying. There are investment committees that sit monthly effectively also to decide on whether projects are going to get funding. And it starts with a disclosure. It starts with a discussion with myself and my colleagues as well. And then we sit down with the applicant and we look at the technology and how it can be funded. You can get up to 650,000 Rand for that. And that goes towards the commercial opportunity. It doesn't necessarily have to end up in a spin-out company, but it can assist in the commercialization towards use, right? We've got a significant patent portfolio. I think back in 2022, we were, from the top patent portfolio filers, PCT filers in the country. And we've got a significant portfolio of companies. So we've done this over and over before when it comes to support, assisting people to take opportunities to market, and then also, opening up doors for people as well through engaging with us. So I want to just sort of end off on this. We've got a very exciting company called BioCode, which you may have come across. It started off with 2 female graduates who took leadership of a company from a Stellenbosch University professor. So the professors not necessarily in the company, but the postgrads are running with it. They participated in various Stellenbosch University Launch Lab programs. In 2020 and 2021, they raised 9 million Rand from the UTF and achieved over 100,000 Rand in sales, this year. Okay. So they're starting to consolidate and scale as well. And, they are generating a lot of interest as well in the technology and our staff have been helpful to them in getting them to where they are at the moment. So thanks so much. Hannah, that's me. Please reach out to us. My email address is sabri@san.ac.za, and I'll be following up with you as well in due course. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sabri. That was a really nice layout. I know sometimes the university ecosystem can be really complex. I saw that David also commented and said, great to see the layout of Stellenbosch University like this. He wished he had seen it when he was at Stellenbosch. So I know that was my case when I was at UCT too. To see the actual layout of who's who and where the support is can be quite complex when you're actually studying. So that was a really great overview. Thank you. We have one question directly for you before we get Anna back on screen. Oh, there she is. So first question for Sabri is, Xander says, in OneBio, we've spoken quite a bit about how solo founders might find the spin-out process more difficult than a group of founders. and just asking for you to comment on whether it's encouraged for a solo founder to approach the launch lab. And I guess that can be extended to you as well, Anna, at UWC.
Absolutely. So look, I mean, you know what it is. I think as we've accepted that not everybody knows everything, and the process of effectively taking a technology from research right through to commercialize is difficult, right? You can work with the tech transfer office, absolutely. If the office have the skills and expertise and that kind of thing to assist you, then that's going to help as a solo, right? But sometimes it improves your chances to secure funding and to get to the market, okay, if you can work with somebody and you can riff off them as well. So you share the load, you share the responsibility, okay, and hopefully you have a team with complementary skills, complementary expertise as well. I'll give you an example in Impulse Biomedical, right? I would put my head on the block and say that they would not have seen the success and overcome the challenges that they've overcome to date if it wasn't for the fact that there were two of them, both from a personal development growth, from a technology commercialization perspective, from keeping each other accountable through the process, right? But it also proves to an investor that you're able to work as a team, okay? If you can't work with anyone else, you're definitely not going to be able to work with an investor. You're not coachable, right? So, you know, this is why I think working as part of a team is very important. You do get people who are very successful as single sort of like person entrepreneurs. It takes a lot of hard work though, right? Thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome. And from you, Anna?
I could not agree more. I think being an entrepreneur is a very tough journey. It's also a very lonely journey. So even if you have the support from the tech transfer office, you've got the support from your ecosystem, your incubators, the OneBios, it's still up to you. It's your business and you have to make it work. And sharing that load emotionally is incredible. I mean, it's really very important. But also, I think Sabri mentioned that a single person does not have all the skills that are needed. So to understand what your strengths are, and most importantly, understand what your weaknesses are, and then try and partner with someone who complements those weaknesses. And if I can give also an example from one of our spin-outs, Hyrax. So there were three founders. They were academic founders, the PI, the postdoc, and the PhD student. But they were very academic. They were very technical. And from a very early stage, they understood they actually needed to bring someone else from outside with a bit more of a commercial and business sense. And they did that. So I think it's really important. If you're a single founder, surround yourself with the right support. But if you can, start looking for team mates. So that preferably complement your skills. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is exactly what our previous session on the importance of finding the right team. And just to remind you all, we will be having a Meet Your Co-Founder in-person event later in November. And hopefully that will complement this conversation. Sabri, did you have another comment?
Yeah, a good bit of advice. Once you find a team member that you can work with, it's like dating, right? Trying to figure each other out first, setting boundaries, who's going to do what, keeping each other accountable, right? And then hopefully if you're successful to move on to like a marriage, and you need a contract between one another. It's like, okay, guy, so that's your equity, your MOI and all that kind of thing, right? That you have to treat it that way.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to give frame the next question, but we've got two after this. So if you can keep it relatively short so we can stick to time.
Yeah. Cool.
Another question was that a common question might be that what is the conversation looks like to determine what percentage shares the university holds in spin-out companies, Could you comment on that? So if each of you want to comment from your perspectives, go ahead with Anna first.
Sure. So it is I guess, ad hoc negotiation. It all depends on the resources that have been, put in from the university, the stage of development, intellectual property, etc. But at UWC, we don't have a launch lab. We actually collaborate with a launch lab, and a lot of our entrepreneurs we send to the launch lab, and that's at UWC's cost. But we certainly offer support for our spinouts, but it is limited. So as a rule, we tend not to take more than 25%, and I'm talking less. So we don't want to be majority shareholders. But other than that, it's very much a negotiation of where are you at, etc.
So, same here. I mean, the amount of resources that spin-out companies effectively access, and the time and energy and expertise, the collective expertise of our team is amazing. If you must meet my colleague Doris Peters, right, who basically is an outsourced governance expert within our team to guide people on her formal job title is as a not a chauffeur, concierge, okay, a company concierge, right? And that's what she does, right? People phone her up at any time and say, Doris, what do I do? There's a tax issue, and then they can sort that out. So access to this is invaluable, and the percentage equity depends on what resources, who's done what, whether we've put from our money into the opportunity, a whole host of various things. And it's a conversation that must start from a particular point. So what I want to do is just invite everybody for that conversation, right? So that everybody's expectations are on the table, and then we know where to start from.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So yeah, it can vary depending on the opportunity, depending on the resources. But as you both mentioned, it really is important for researchers to come to you early so that you can kind of speak about this from the beginning. There's quite a long question, but I really like this from Steven. So this will be our second last. And again, please just try to comment quickly. So I'm going to read it out to you. In a scenario where one has graduated and left university, but a prospective business idea requires further research to determine viability of a concept, would it be advisable to return to a university to conduct the relevant research and utilize the university support structures to commercialize this? Or would it be better to find an avenue to do the necessary research independently or privately? Many universities insist on being the legal owners of any IP generated through the research conducted on their premises, which the student is typically required to acknowledge and sign at registration. Can this be circumvented if the research was conceptualized independently of the institution / negotiated prior to registration? In this context, could each of the guests please provide a brief summary of the pros and cons of using the academic institution / services versus searching for funding to do this privately? Does the affiliation with the university offer better prospects with finding funding and expanding as a business down the road? Sabri, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so it is possible. So there's a couple of things. First of all, yes, I mean, if you want to do it if you require to complete a degree and have to do like a master's over 2-3 years and a PhD over 5 years, whatever, in order to do that, then sure, right? If that's the level of validation that you need. And then, you can register, you can get access to everything. Yes, depending on how the project is funded, we look at full cost or not. If it's full cost, then the founder the company effectively owns the intellectual property, and then that's a negotiation discussion on its own. But you see, it depends on what needs to be done, right? If you are an independent company and you want to contract the university and just work with the university and you want to pay for certain services, then You enter into a service level agreement, you pay full cost for the service for the little project, and then you own all the IP that comes from the assessment or whatever the case may be. So there are various ways to skin the cat, and I think just a conversation with us to plan it out would be great. Anna?
Sorry, you're on
I keep
mute.
getting
There we go.
muted. So if I can just quickly add to that, I agree with Sabri. So there's various possibilities. If you already have something going, and you want to engage with the university, it can the IP ownership can be negotiated. But I think the important bit to understand is that if you are registered as a student at a university, the research that's being done at that university is being subsidized by public funding, so taxpayers' money. And because of that, there is a law that says any research IP developed using taxpayers' money. So if you are doing research as a student registered, being subsidized by taxpayers' money, that intellectual property, those research outputs need to be owned by the university. So it's not that the universities insists, is that there's a law. If, however, and Sabri mentioned, the research is being done at full cost. And what that means is that the company pays for everything. Taxpayers' money is not involved in the research. So the research happens at the university, the student is registered at the university, but the company pays for everything, no subsidization. Then the IP can be owned by the university, by the company. So I think it's that distinction around if taxpayers' funding is used, the IP has to be owned by the university, or at the very least co-owned between the university and the company. If there's no taxpayers' money, then definitely the company can own everything. So it's a negotiation as to where we're at. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you both. Stephen, I hope that answered your question. If you do have a follow-on from it, please email us and I will forward it on to Sabri and Anna, and they can do a follow-up answer for you. One more question. Again, let's keep it short, and then I'm going to hand us over to a short break. John T asked, any advice from either of you on sourcing of fundings for living costs for early stage founders of deep tech ventures pre-revenue, aside from the SU Translational Fellow program?
Can I go?
Yeah, go for it.
So look, there might be a little bit of DTIC funding, even though the DTIC will look at, usually they prefer post-revenue, but you might have. But the Technology Innovation Agency, as far as I know, has a youth technology innovation program, I think it's called, which is specifically for entrepreneurs, pre-revenue, etc. And there's also the GCIP, which is also TIA, but that's specifically more green tech. But green tech, biotech sometimes can fall under green tech as well, and it does cover, living costs, I think, is more a salary component, for the company, because that's what your living costs would be. So I would think, talk to the Technology Innovation Agency, which specifically is grant funding and it is pre-revenue. I don't know if, Sabri, you know of any others.
Yeah, so I know of founders who had to walk dogs to be able to eat. Okay, I'm not kidding you. They consulted. And it's tough. It's really, really tough. It's not for the faint-hearted, right? And hopefully you've chosen technology in a market where your time to revenue is very short. Okay, because we don't like to see people suffer, right? So yeah, see if you can turn a hobby into a source of revenue. And yeah, good luck.
John T, I will also have a look and see if we have any more information from Tia to send you some follow-up information about that. Awesome. Stephen says, thank you for the valuable distinction, and it clarified a lot. So thank you both. Really appreciate it. Always good to see a bit of an overview from the university side, and obviously your experience beyond your specific institutions is super valuable to the ecosystem. I am going to, I know that a few of you on here are from UCT. It is unfortunate we couldn't get a UCT representative, but I've put the RCNI Research Contracts and Innovation website into the chat, so you can check out their website. And if you do have specific questions from a UCT point of view, please send me an email and we'll be able to follow up with a session later on from either Dr. Andrew Bailey or Dr. Bruce Nseko from RCNI. Awesome. I'm going to go over to our break now. We were meant to kick off at 10 past, but I'm going to give us until 15:15. So we will kick off at 11:15 again. Sabri and Anna, you're welcome to stay for our next session with Wayne Stocks. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us, and we really appreciate it. And I'm sure we will be in contact soon again. Cheers.
Well, I know, can
Thanks,
we
everyone.
just be in the background, and then if
Yes,
need be, when it
we'll
comes to
put
the
you-
Q&A later? Okay, cool.
Exactly. So yeah,
Alright
if you
then.
are able to hang around, you can be part of the Q&A at the end, and everyone in the chat can ask some questions. But we'll put you backstage for now, and then see you after the break.
Cool.
Thanks.
All right then. Cool.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks
Well.
so much. Bye.
Funding support from the UTF. Hi, Wayne. How are you?
Good morning.
How are you doing this morning? Good.
I'm good, thanks very much. Yeah, I was listening in to Anna and Sabri, who I know very well, and yeah, nice to hear what they had to say.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining. I'm sure then you'll be able to follow on nicely from the previous discussion, but give us an intro to yourself and the UTF before we kick things off.
Sure. If I can share my slides.
Go for it.
Okay. 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 Let's see. Window. It's
There should be a share link at the bottom.
yeah, it's saying some security issue, which is never great with this platform and my highly secured laptop. That's what happens when you're a registered financial service provider. People make you implement all these weird and wonderful things, which actually are counterproductive at the end of the day.
Well, it's good to know that it's safe and secure.
Not sure how to get about this.
If you're able to,
Yep.
if you're able to send the slides to me over email quick,
I will
and
do that.
then I'll be able to pop it up from my side.
Thanks, Hannah. I will do that in a sec. It won't take a minute. And there we go.
Awesome. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Just hang in there.
Yeah, sorry about that, everybody.
No worries.
Okay. This. You should have that in your inbox, Hannah. And
Cool.
I will then
Give
just
it a
kick off.
second.
So yes, as introduced, thank you. Wayne Stocks, I'm the managing partner of the University Technology Fund. I guess what's important to note, and I'm glad Hannah put it in, is I think both myself and my co-founder, managing partner, Daniel Strauss, we've both been founders and entrepreneurs in the past. So I was sick of corporates in 2009, decided to leave, and it was then I started my first business. Pretty lucky, we built a fintech and was able to sell that in 18 months. And from then on, kind of the bug bit. We've had some failures along the way, but essentially, while we were building companies and being involved in companies, we were investing on the side. So everything we made from exits, we started investing as angels, and then further down the line. And then only then started a formal fund in 2020. So that was, 11 years after the first startup. And I think it's important because being a founder you need to have empathy, and being an investor, you need to have empathy. And I think there's too many investors out there, or just investment bankers, and and hats off to them. Some of them do a really good job, but what I think they miss is the human aspect and how difficult it sometimes is, and being in the shoes of someone else. And I think that's important to note, and especially in the asset class in which we're discussing today, deep tech, and especially in the commercialization of university IP, you really need to understand the humans, because it's really smart humans that are coming up with these ideas and research, but there's often they don't have the entrepreneurial background or aren't commercial, and so there's a patience that's needed, there's an understanding that's needed. So I think that's important to note.
Sorry, I am trying to get the slides up. It hasn't come
No
through
problem.
yet, so just give it one more.
And so from a UTF perspective, essentially we started in 2020, and the mandate there is exactly that, to commercialize university IP. And so we work very closely with the technology transfer offices. There's obviously 26 public universities in South Africa, as well as science councils as well. So the likes of the CSIR and the Agricultural Resource Council, Research Council. We've worked with them in the past as well. And essentially, because deep tech is complex, we work at a very early stage. We invest slightly later, but what we do is we walk the journey with these founders from a very early stage. So we're working with the TTOs, technology transfer offices. We have monthly and sometimes monthly calls or quarterly calls with the offices, and to understand what kind of research is coming through, what's happening, what are they seeing, and how can we encourage and get involved in those projects. And so we've actually even worked with on a project level prior to even spin-out companies actually coming to the fore. Next one, please. Thanks, Hannah. So yeah, the thesis is very simple. I mean, if you look at all the developed innovation hubs and successful VC hubs, they're all centered around universities. And that's pretty simple. Why? You've got the talent, you've got breakthrough technologies that are happening. And I think what corporates often lack, some corporates have huge R&D budgets, but what they're very linear in their thinking. They're trying to solve a specific problem for maybe a specific sector. What universities are interesting, why universities are interesting, is they've got multiple faculties looking at things from a different perspective. So you might have 3 or 4 faculties working on a particular challenge or problem, and they're attacking it from different areas. And so you find a really breakthrough IP and technology. And I think that's extremely important. And then you've got a lot of young, driven, motivated people that are willing to get involved in startups and take that risk to develop these companies. So that's a high-level thesis. Next one, please. So just a fund overview. We started our first fund in Jan 2020, and that mandate was only university spin-outs, and we did pretty early. We did some pre-seed actually, and we called it seed, Series Seed and Series A, and I'll talk to what that means. We had a fund size of about 225 million. We've invested in 24 spin-outs, investing from 1.5 to about 20 million, and it was all South African. That's fully deployed. We are not investing out of that fund anymore. We're now just trying to grow those companies and eventually exit them. The fund is 10 years long, and I think that's also something which slightly conflicts. The 10-year fund is a US VC Silicon Valley type thing. We've adopted those because that's the only thing our investors in our fund understand. But I actually do not think that is the best way of doing this moving forward. And so, but it is going to take time to change, because 10 years is not a long time. And so it puts a lot of pressure on the founders. So you guys are trying to grow a business, and it's, let's say, a biotech. It takes a long time. You're just starting to like really hit your straps in year 7, 8, 9, and now all of a sudden you've got an investor jumping up and down saying, "Hey, I'm going to sell my shares," or "Let's sell the company." And so there's a conflict of interest often there. So the verdict's still out on that one, but we've still got 3.5 years left of that fund, and we work to grow those businesses. And then we'll look to exit. We can extend the fund by a couple of years, which is also a bit of a grace period. Our seed fund, we start in May. There we're looking at spinouts and alumni founders. So what we found is spinouts are very centric around science. Of course, that's what universities do. That's what university researchers are good for and do well. But we found that to manage our portfolio and construct our portfolio better, and also to ensure that universities start pushing their alumni and to create a bigger, more cohesive ecosystem, we want to invest in alumni founders. So if you've gone to a South African university and you've started a technology business, we essentially can invest in you. We invest at seed stage. We're currently investing. We've made 9 investments. We want to do about 12 to 15, more likely 15. So we've still got investment money that we can invest. And then our fund 2 is a much bigger fund, later stage. Again, we can invest in alumni and spinouts. We've done 5 investments. We want to do at least 10 to 15 there, and we can go up to 40 million rand in that fund. Okay, next one. So I think what's important, I don't have a great understanding of who's in the room. And so some of this might be quite basic, some might be new. I want to give and some might be too detailed. But what I want to do is really focus on what's important. And essentially is, why should you raise, right? And there's a quote there by Bezos, which kind of just fits in quite nicely of why deep tech companies should raise progressively. And we think of it like a mining exploration company. So if you think about a mining exploration company, now if I come and say, listen, I've secured a license in the Northern Cape and I want to build an iron ore mine there, no one's going to give you the money up front. Now you need, let's say, R1 billion to develop and start producing iron ore out of this mine. No one's going to give you the money because you haven't proved the resource. So what happens is the mining exploration companies go and they go, all right, I've got the license. I need some partners along the way. I need some investors to come and give me 15 million rand. And so we can drill a few holes to start making sure that the iron ore is where we think it is. And so they drill a few holes and you start firming up the resource. In other words, you start getting an idea of how much iron ore is actually down there. But you don't have a lot of certainty because you only had 50 million rands. You can drill, let's say 10 drill holes. And so you then start firming up and saying, well, there's a somewhat certainty that we have something, and this is how big we think it is. Then the value goes up. You go to raise more money, drill more holes, etc. And through that process, now once you've drilled sufficient holes to de-risk the asset, to say, well, there is a big resource here. We can build a mine. We can do a feasibility on it, and we can now go and construct. Then you go and raise a whole bunch more money, of different types of money, to actually start constructing and then producing and then actually then beneficiating. That's what it's like, especially for a deep tech company where you're building on research to be able to develop a product or a service that you can sell in the market. You need funding along the way. Next slide. So this just talks to the key message. So if you want to raise money and you need to raise money, not every opportunity you should be raising. Not every idea or research or spin out should be really raising money. Research for the sake of research, sometimes good. Some research turns into incredible IP or products that, hey, maybe only 2 companies in the world can use or can distribute. So if you build something that competes with 2 or 3 of the biggest companies in the world, are you really going to raise a lot of money to try and go through the 10 years and then spend hundreds of millions marketing to try and beat them? Maybe it's better to license it. So I think one needs to go and really in the beginning and say, well, this IP and technology, can it be commercialized or should it be licensed? And that's a key decision and something that we work with the TTOs with. The TTOs sometimes don't have the commercial experience or the commercial people within them to really be able to debate this accurately. The big ones do, and then some key individuals are very good. Anna, for one, is in a small TTO, but she's I've got a huge amount of respect for her. She's amazing. Sabri works in a bigger TTO and they do amazing work as well. So they have commercial people that can help people understand this, but some of the other TTOs don't. And so we get involved in those debates. But essentially, to understand what investors are looking for, right? Investors are looking to decrease risk and shareholder value over time, right? And so if you define risk as the uncertainty of achieving an objective, you need to decrease risk as you go along. And so adding money or raising money, which gives you the resources to be able to work on those milestones to de-risk the opportunity, therefore increase, and that increases the risk. And that's essentially what shareholders or investors are looking at. And so in every approach, and the key message when you are speaking to investors or doing pitches or proposal or pitches, whatever the case is, think of these things. How does everything that I do decrease the risk and increase the shareholder value? Because at the end of the day, I've seen too many people pitching really great ideas, but they're pitching to me like I'm going to be the consumer of their product. I'm an investor. I'm not going to buy your rapid test for COVID or whatever the case is. I'm not a distributor. I'm not actually there to buy your product. And they spend the whole pitch saying how amazing the science is and amazing this product is, but they're not showing me as an investor of, okay, great. If I give you money, how are you going to utilize that money to decrease the risk and the shareholder value to get to an inflection point, which means that you can either raise more money or start generating revenue to break even. So then that key value inflection point is also something which you need to identify. So say, hey, how much money do I need to get to a point where the technology is de-risked to a stage where other investors might come on, or I can actually go sell it to a customer to test or whatever the case may be. So those buzzwords, as it were, risk, shareholder value or value, and then value inflection points is something you need to be able to define very clearly and understand in your own head. Next one. So TRL levels, I'm sure you've done this. And again, I thought I'd just quickly gloss over it, but the technology readiness levels is really the 9 steps to show how mature your tech is. And another thing is I'll show the TRL levels, and the next slide I'll show where we invest. But this assumes that all the other things are in place, and I'll talk to some of those other things that are in place. But if we just assume the technology and let's say the product or service, there's a lot of different types of funding out there. You're only really going to start looking at venture funding when you get to around maybe TRL 5, but more likely TRL 6 and 7. There's a lot more investors around TRL 9, which is essentially you've got something ready to launch and commercialize. You can actually go to the investor and say, here it is, here's my rapid test. It's been tested. There's some people willing to trial in the market, or I've got my approvals, whatever the case is. That tangibility is what investors understand and recognize, because it's all about pattern recognition for investors. And I think that's one of the complexities in a deep tech environment is us investors aren't smart like you guys are at a specific thing. And so we don't understand the science. And so, we're a sector agnostic investor as in the UTF, and we don't have any specialist biotech or life science engineers or scientists on in our team. But what we do is we outsource a lot of that when we're doing a due diligence to more smart people in those verticals that allow us to be able to gather, does the tech work, what does the market look like, etc. So during this journey from TRL 1 to 9, you're going to need different stakeholders, different investors or funders. And again, working with your TTO, early stage investors, angel investors is absolutely key. Another thing, I guess, on the angel investor side, 10%, if we looked at the exits over the last 20 years for South African built startups, and 10% of the initial fund or the funding was actually done by angels. It's very difficult to get angel investors in this space because it's very specialized. But that also shows that it's about your network and people that believe in you to be able to get you off the ground. Just a little bit of early money just to get you going, to be able to actually show something tangible to investors. Next slide. So just with a UTF lens on where we fund, We look at it basically like this. So research and development is more traditional grant funding. Our seed fund, our fund one went across kind of all the way from develop to scale up. That's now done. As I said, our seed fund looks at anything from development, which is generally around TRL 6, to go to market. And then our fund two is really growth and scale. And again, what I've said here, this only speaks to TRL levels. It assumes all the other essential aspects like team, product, market, etc., all covered. You can't just have a technology and expect to go and raise money. You need to have answers or an idea of those other things. All right, next one. I just thought of a case study. I actually did a talk with the CEO of this company last week in Johannesburg at a big investor day. This is a spin out of University of Stellenbosch. They're in the biotech, life sciences, pharmaceutical side, and essentially they're a precision fermentation business, which has done incredibly well. If you go to the next slide, you'll see our journey, and I think this talks to. We only started our first the fund one, as I said, in August 2020. If you look at where we started conversations with this team in 2019. We were introduced by the TTO. We had a first pitch by them. They didn't even have a company. They were still operating as postgrad students doing their masters in the lab, based on campus in a university lab. And so we started talking to them and saying, "Hey guys, what are you looking at here?" We started working with them, and we identified that, hey, this is a really amazing team. The three co-founders. They have different skill sets, and that's super important. I mean, the one question was, what about single founders? Single founders, it's a tough gig. Generally, when you're going from 0 to 1, you need people who are dynamic, take risks, a lot of grit. But then when you're going from kind of one building up to scale, you need people with experience on systems, people that can be very, very kind of process driven. That's how you scale. You don't do that with. So you need a lot of different types of personalities, and that's super hard. Anyway, long and short is we started being in 2019. They incorporated in December 2019. Through us, they got their first pre-seed funding through the SSME fund, and we managed that as grant funding. Then in March 2020, we put our first check in there, 1.5 million. Again, that was our investment, but it was a bucket of money we were given by one of our investors. March 23, we invested the first series investment, 5 million. Then we did some bridging loans because they didn't quite commercialize. They didn't reach the sales and they're running out of money. And then we put a bigger round of 10 million into them. And then now more recently in July, we put another 10 million into our second fund. So we've supported them, invested about 27.5 of our own money. They've raised about 50 million in total. And they've been going for the last 6 years, and they're now profitable. They're a profitable company, and they're selling their products in 11 different countries. And it's a really, really amazing story. They're only now 31 years old. And we've been working them for over 6, almost 7 years now. And so we started with them when they were super young, and I'm really proud of what their journey has been. Next one. Other than invest capital, and I think that's something that's super important. Yes, people are desperate. We need to raise money, and we'll just take money from anywhere and everywhere. Sometimes that actually, unfortunately, is the way to go, and it's the only way to go. But when you're in a position to be able to choose, you need to choose investors that believe in you as humans. And I think that's what gets missed here, especially in a very deep tech environment where science is so fundamental to products, and is that people are like, oh, it's all about the science, all about the technology. But technology and science doesn't actually create a company and commercialize it. It's the people. And I can promise you in Africa, I would rather back people than the smartest tech out there, because it's business models, commercial models, and people that make it work at the end of the day. If you can't build a team, you can't get on with investors, etc., you're not going to attract through the long journey of this through the long tail of this journey, you'll be able to attract the right people. So get people that you can work with, that believe in you, and that can give you advice and support in different areas. And so we, from a Mobizyme perspective, we've done a ton of work with them in the governance, fundraising, advisory, and the partnerships. My business partner even flew to China to go and source supply chains for them. And so they're busy buying in a lot of their chemicals and other things from China. through what we've done. And we don't get paid for that, but they create shareholder value, and obviously that's good for us at the end of the day. All right, next one. So look, I want to quickly breeze through this. The type of startup funding, obviously there's during the research and development ideation incorporation stage, there's research and innovation grants, there's TTO type funding. Some of the TTOs have funding available. UCT and Stellenbosch do a lot of early funding for their spin-outs, which is fantastic. We wish more TTOs in South Africa did have that facility. I've actually been pushing the government, TIA and the DS Department of Science quite hard recently on putting more of that money in the hands of the universities, but that's another story for another day. Founders, angels, and family offices are very active, generally pretty active in South Africa, more so than other markets, but again, we need a lot more of that. We need more success stories, more exits, and more young people that are getting into the space to draw attention to it. Then VC capital really kicks in. That's after the R&D, ideation, incorporation. And that's when we have early stage funding, pre-seed and seed, and then growth, post the venture investments. We often have venture debt. And then when you're really looking at getting bigger, your growth and expansion, asset financing. So there if you're developing machinery, and then again, a lot of the deep tech stuff is more it's R&D, IP and tech and software, but then it does have a hardware component. So in the Mobizyme has very expensive machines. It's got all kinds of boilers and things which need other types of funding, and there are other types of funding available. Next one, please. So what else do you need to raise investment? I think just want to touch on this. So product, you've got to know your product. What is your product going to be? Even at the early stage, have a clear product vision and roadmap. Even if it's all the way into the future, at least you have, and we know it's going to change. As investors, we know the stuff is going to change, but at least we want you to have some form of thesis and belief in what you guys are doing. And the team, why are you the best people to execute on this opportunity? And then what does your future team look like? Again, if you're one founder, identify that's when you're speaking to potential investors going, hey guys, I know this is not perfect. I'm looking for another founder or a co-founder, and these are the skill sets that I'm looking for in this person. Then you've at least identified that, and you're walking into this journey eyes wide open. That makes a huge difference, as opposed to a single founder that walks in and says, I don't need anyone else. I'm perfect for this. We as investors have seen the story, and then that's a massive blind spot. And that will 9 times out of 10 lead you to fail. So at least when you don't have the answers, be open to suggestions and actually bring those forward. The commercial model, how are you going to make money and how are you going to scale that? Super important. And again, it can be rather theoretical, but that's okay. At least have a theory and a thesis to bring forward. Finance, what do you need? And the investment roadmap. Again, you're not going to raise once. That is now happening in certain things now with AI, where SPVCs are potentially looking to invest earlier, which is good for people looking to start up now. Because of the AI revolution, people are generally creating things which are a lot quicker and with fewer people and cheaper, which means that sometimes some companies in software anyway, people will only raise once or might just do that with angel money. They won't actually get to need VC in future. But when you're looking at it more of a deep tech environment where it's R&D and research and that type of thing, generally you're going to need VC at some point. So you need to understand the investment roadmap. And it's okay to be able to invest many times into the future. But again, it's understanding what's the risk, your value, and those inflection points of when you'll be able to raise. Unit economics, understand again your margins, why this will be profitable and scalability. Again, you might be at lab stage, but when there's a lot of there's a lot of companies that have gone before, and a lot of literature out there where you can refer to say, well, we're doing this process, therefore we assume we're going to be profitable, our margin is going to be this. Again, you need to have a thesis and be able to be compelling enough for an investor to go, okay, this sounds reasonable. Yes, it's going to be firmed up over time, but this sounds, when we start, at least the stuff's looking good. If you've got gross profit margins now and you say, oh, I'm only going to make 10% gross profit margin, then don't do the business, because it never ends up better. It really ends up better than you think it is. And so I think that's also something to consider. Then geopolitical and regulatory, there's all kinds of hurdles often with these things. Understand them and be able to, and again, eyes wide open. Understand your market, the opportunity and the customers. So who's actually going to buy this thing at the end of the day, and go and speak to them. Go and speak to a few people that know people or are customers or know the customers or understand the market better than you do, to be able to at least understand that will someone actually buy this product or service once you've done. And there's been too many kind of science tech heavy companies that we've seen in the past, some which we've invested in, unfortunately, that build the product, but no one wants to buy it because it's too expensive or it's too clunky or it doesn't move well or whatever the case is. Those simple things often trip you up. Understand your competitors and be realistic, and understand what your unique selling points are, your USP is. Make sure that your corporate governance is in place. No one wants to give money to a company that's just doesn't know where it goes and there's no one looking after it. Show that you're transparent and accountable and good custodians of capital. Again, you might not have this up front, but at least identify that to say, hey, we don't have any of these things. We don't even have, we've got one board of directors, but we've got a bookkeeper and we've got a secretarial company, but our TTO is helping us. And once we've raised money, we'll slowly start putting this into action. That's all we need to know. And at least that it's front of mind. And then cap table, your shareholder structure is super important. If you've got a whole bunch of random people that won't add value, or people that are controversial, or the founders that are actually operating and running this business own a tiny piece because they've raised too much money or the wrong money, which often happens with private equity, then you're not incentivized. If you as a founder are going to be working in this thing for 10 years and you don't own enough of the business, you're not incentivized enough because the journey is hard, and you're not incentivized enough to be able to run the journey. Therefore, why would I put my money and risk it? And so for me, often what we do is when we invest, we go, hold on, you guys don't own enough. How do we get more into your hands? So do we create a share incentive scheme, or go negotiate with the current shareholders, whatever the case is, to be able to give you what you need to be able to run the journey? And then market pull, not push. If you're trying to push a product into, and that's often hard because it's often new science and new products and services. If you're trying to push it into the market, super hard. People don't change behavior very easy. You need to spend a lot of money to convince them to change. If your product is 5% better, that's not going to happen. People don't change behavior. It needs to be significantly better for them to be able to, for you to push it. It's always easier for when people are pulling it. So in other words, there's already demand out there. And then traction, any type of traction, investors want to see that, right? So if you don't have sales and revenue, of course, that's early stage or custom orders. At least show traction on your milestones. So, hey, we set these milestones for these technical things 12 months ago. Look, we've nailed them. And now there's another 10 milestones which are going to add value, de-risk, and create inflection points. Though that's traction. It just shows me that you can execute on what you say you can do. Next one. Just some quick things before I really want to get to questions. Psychology. Understand what capital you need, understand your audience. If you're coming to pitch to an investor, at least understand who they are, understand what they invest in, understand like they've invested in something similar, or even if they haven't, what they've invested in. Go, hey, I love that you guys invested in this thing. It shows that you're actually interested. Don't give them a chance to say no. What I suggest to entrepreneurs is when you go to investors, say, hey, we're thinking of raising in X couple of months. This is where we are right now. This is what we want to create. This is our vision. What would you like to see as an investor to get involved? Where would you? And so now I'm giving you exactly what you need. So you can come back in a month's time and say, hey, Wayne, you said all these things. We've actually got them. Or, hey, Wayne, actually, we've got those things. When you tell someone, give them opportunity to say no, they generally will, especially investors. So don't give them opportunity to say no. Make them fall in love with your story. Why are you passionate about this? Why the human behind it? Narrative is so important. So why are you doing it? The mission, the words you use, the key little differentiators like your value inflection points, your risk. When you're talking, when you speak like investors, the words that investors understand, they resonate. And so why you? Why now? Be solution oriented. Understand, be honest about your gaps and weaknesses. As I said, understand your customer. Don't sell the product and and technology. I'm not the investor, is not the customer. As I said, understand your numbers. Too many people go out there and they spread the science because that's where they're comfortable, but they don't know how to talk the numbers. And at the end of the day, you're asking for money to create money, therefore understand some numbers. And what else do you need from the investor? And then it's all about team. If you can bring one or two people with you when you're pitching, like two founders or a teammate, whatever, it just shows that, hey, you're able to build a team, and it just the conversation goes better. All right. I think there's might be one slide. I'm not sure. We've got, how much time we've got, Hannah? I think that's it. I'd rather get to questions.
So we've got 10 minutes, but I'm going to ask people to start putting questions in the chat.
That'll be great.
No one has submitted anything yet. So if you want to
cool.
round it off with this while people are sharing some questions.
So in 2021, there's a huge amount of investor venture capital out in especially in Africa. Then things kind of hit a wall. 2022 was really bad. 23 is slightly better. What we're seeing now is there's more capital, but they're more disciplined. So they're going to companies that are of higher quality. In other words, people that are managing their capital better. They're more efficient companies, i.e. the resources they use to develop value is lower. Valuations have come down. People are really looking for quality metrics, financial metrics. So margins and profitability must be high. People also really want to see longer runway expectations, i.e. if I'm funding you, you at least need to have 18 months to be able to reach that next value inflection point. I'm not going to give you money for 6 months and then you run out of money and you can't get to that point. There's fewer exits, but and most of the exits, however, are trade sales, so sales to, let's say, strategics. And then companies are remaining private for longer. That's what we've seen. And people are really looking at defensible technology or proprietary data and intellectual property now because of AI. And so that actually, I think, for me is very exciting, because very difficult for people just to come along and try and replicate the research and R&D, which is happening at universities. You can speed it up and things like that with AI, but to actually replicate it, very difficult. So I think there's going to be more people moving in, and I've seen this, more VCs starting to talk to us about co-investing into proprietary data and intellectual property type opportunities. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think that was a really valuable overview of not just the UTF, but the whole kind of landscape and the whole gap between the kind of translation of research that we've seen historically in South Africa. I particularly love the case study of Amobazyme. We recently had Nick Enslin just explain their whole commercialization journey and speak about the ups and downs of Amobazyme. I know them personally from before their journey into Amobazyme. So I really, I love their story, and awesome that you guys have played such a big role. I'll kick off with some of our questions. John T actually asked a question also similar to do with the Amobazyme case study. He asked, what value do your companies, for example, Amobazyme, need to demonstrate to secure further funding rounds from the UTF after you've invested in them initially?
Sure. I guess it talks to different stages and the different pools of capital we've had, but at the early stage, they weren't going to generate revenue in the first 2 years, and we knew that. But for us, it was about putting those technical milestones in place and those product milestones in place, and then them reaching that. So we'd say, okay, guys, for the next 18 months, what are those technical milestones that will get you, so the science and the tech, what will get you to a point where in 18 months, maybe you can start selling something? And so they would then, in a very granular fashion, put those milestones in place. And if we're seeing that they're knocking those things down, then it gives us a lot more confidence. It decreases the risk again, right? It increases the value. We would say to them in the beginning, their business model and their financial models and their commercial understanding and their customer understanding was very, very low, to be honest, in the beginning. And we challenged them. We said, all right, go build a better business model. Go and speak to a whole bunch of customers, understand what they need and why they would actually change their current supply to you guys. Is it price? Is it quality? Is it because you're nice humans? And they are, but what is it? And define that. And so in everything, whether it's financial, commercial, business model, technology, product, team. We gave them challenges for those 18 months, and we then let them run. And then we'd work with them on a quarterly basis, say, where are you with that? Are you struggling with that? And so what that's teaching me is these guys can evolve. They can think like entrepreneurs, not scientists, and they're understanding the market, but they're knocking the science at everything as well. And so it's a whole holistic thing. And then it gives me a lot of confidence in the team that they can execute on all these things. And again, decreases the risk of, if I give them the next check, will they be able to execute on those things in the future? Will they be able to adapt? Will they be able to grow a team? Will they be able to engage with customers? That's exactly what those guys did. They've evolved massively. And Hannah, I think you would attest to that. I mean, I was on a plane with Dom, the CEO. Him and I flew together last week, Wednesday actually, and we flew back, stayed in the same hotel, had dinner together. He was like, "Wayne, I can't believe you guys invested in us when we were a bunch of youngsters, drinking way too much at varsity, and now like we've evolved to the where we are, and it's awesome. I love it because they're just good people." So again, it's all about people and executing on those value inflection points, as it were.
Yeah, thank you for emphasizing that. I mean, it's a conversation we have time and time again, and really realizing that, yes, you might have an incredible technology, the science might be really sound. The whole holistic view of what investors really look for and what actually makes a company and an idea sustainable is that whole holistic view of the people and the evolution of the whole story, and and nurturing those relationships. So awesome. So I'm going to go on to the next question. David asked, how do you keep information confidential between different investments and companies? Biotech, especially in South Africa, tends to have overlap in multiple areas, and investees want to know that their potential competition in the same VC portfolio won't pivot into their ideas or go-to-market strategy.
That's an excellent question. And I think it talks to the humans that you let invest into your company, right? We tend to sit as observers on the board. We do not do anything more after we've invested. And so once we're doing a DD, we'll do the due diligence on the science and all the rest of it. But again, as I said, we outsource that. And so we have confidentiality agreements with the scientist or researcher that will perform the due diligence on that particular technology. And that will then remain confidential. We don't then go and dig into any of that IP ever again, really. We're sitting as observers and strategic advisors along everything else in the business. And I think that's also, while I think it's a blessing and a curse, because we're a sector agnostic investor. We're not scientists, but we know everything else that it takes to build a business. We don't understand the science per se, but then we're not getting involved in the science. That's for the team to be able to sort out, right? So there's never been a case where we think we can take or even would be worthwhile, even if we were to do that, to be able to share information. But we never would, but it doesn't make sense for us ever. So yeah, it's getting the right people and making sure that you have that meeting of minds, and then it's up to the team.
Awesome. But I hope, David, let me know if you want a follow-up to that or if that's good. I'm going to go on to the next few. Stephen asks, he's referring back to a question that he asked in the first half of the session to Sabri and Anna, but now phrasing it for you. He asked, would it be advisable to return to a university to conduct the relevant research for an idea that requires further research to demonstrate viability of a concept? As an investor, would you advise someone at the R&D and ideation stage, pre-incorporation, to return to an academic institution, or would you preferably invest in an entity that is private of an academic institution? In your example of Immobizyme, was the initial affiliation with Stellenbosch University beneficial for helping them get off the ground, and was it beneficial for subsequent expansion?
Really good question. And I think it is on a case-by-case basis. For Immobizyme specifically, they were in the university doing research in the lab, and that technology was years of research they were then going to commercialize. And so when that spin-out happened, the University of Stellenbosch was a shareholder, and that a lot of that IP was then licensed as well to the company. that affiliation was amazing because Stellenbosch also co-invested. They put money in with us alongside a smaller amounts of money, but when UTF put money in, they also put a little bit of their own money in. So they were actually an investor as well, not just a shareholder. Also, the teams were, for the first just over 2 years, was in the labs. They were getting free access to a lab and usage of that lab, as well as the tens of millions of rands worth of equipment that were in that lab. And that's the challenge with a lot of these biotechs, is that they need all this crazy equipment and machinery. And if you have like 10 different biotechs, private companies, and they're all raising money to buy the same types of machines, that's where a OneBio, comes in. They kind of bring everyone together and say, hey, let's share resources. That's why it makes sense. And that's why it makes sense to do that at the university. Also, the credibility around, hey, the Stellenbosch name attached to it was good, speaking to customers and investors, the corporate governance and that type of thing that the university helped them get around and create in the early stages was really important. So the launch lab in Stellenbosch was very good around helping that young team as well with us to build that. They then, what was very important for us was said, hey guys, now that you've been more mature, you need to get out of the university. You need to create your own culture within the company. You need to create your own future and clip the university kind of arm attached to it's a Stellenbosch company. It's not a Stellenbosch company anymore. Stellenbosch is a shareholder. It is your company. You're the founders. You're running the business. Own it and move away. And so that has now helped them change their mindset around growth. They're off to the races. In other senses, if you have a great idea and you come into the university, if you need the money and the research and the expertise of research, then yes, I would say go to the university, but go very specifically with those conversations up front to say, this is what my thinking is. This is how, if we spin it out, what percentages, and negotiate all that stuff up front. This is the value I bring. This is the value you guys bring. Define that, because I think that's when there's gray area, and that's when people are unhappy around, oh, hold on, you own this, I own that. That's never a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was framed really well. It's something, again, we have conversations about all the time, the role, when and for how long the university plays in that research and development, getting you off the ground, and then what the next stage is and what the next step is in that pipeline. Before I get to the next question, I'm going to ask Rodrigo in the back end to just bring Anna and Sabri back on screen. And if anyone has questions for any of our guest speakers, now is your chance. The next question was, are there any reservations against working with founders who are part of unrelated projects? So, for example, project 1 has person A, B, and C, and project 2 has person A, D, and E. So someone who is splitting their time between projects. Are there any reservations from an investor's point of view?
We've got several instances like this, but I think it's just core of, again, defining what each party is doing for this business, right? If you're a CEO on this side of the fence and somewhere else, that's not going to work. Me as an investor, I want to know that you've got a vested interest in this. And so, again, if there's multiple founders, that's a lot easier. The problem is investors, I put my money, and if you've got better options somewhere else, then you go, and my money's now done, and I burn it and write it off, and you go and run your other venture, which I'm not involved in. That is a massive risk, as I was talking about risk and return, right? It's and so you need to be honest about these things, but can you really do it? And in my experience, in the early stages, that is possible. You can have, let's say, a CEO on both sides and a CTO or a chief science officer or chief commercial officer or chief financial officer. Those roles, potentially you can actually have kind of hybrid and multi. But then when the company gets to a certain point, you need to have an answer for it. Say, oh, hold on, now we need a full-time person or whatever the case is. I mean, I've been a part-time CFO on startups and like raised $20 million. But because it's a CFO, I'm not the most important person developing the product and the technology. And so, it's just various stages that is possible. But you need to be honest with the investors, and you need to be honest with yourself as well. How long can you sustain it and manage that?
Awesome. I am going to just put it to Anna and Sabri for a second. If you did listen in on Wayne's section, if you have any comments or add-ons or any questions from your side, feel free to jump on and ask them now. That's it. If you do, if not, you can wait.
So if I can have a comment, and this is just so the UTF did invest in one of our spin-outs at UWC, and I have to say that yes, it was wonderful, as Wayne mentioned, wonderful to get the investment, the cash. But really, one of the biggest values was to have them as part of the board as an observer. I mean, even as a director would have been absolutely incredible. The experience that they bring, the advice, they know, they've been doing this for years. They know exactly what to do. And I will emphasize on Wayne is that empathy. It's been incredible to have an investor on board with that type of empathy to understand entrepreneurs are struggling. So I absolutely, it's been an incredible, wonderful journey working with the UTF. That's where I'll leave it. Thanks.
Thanks, Anna. Love you too.
I just want to reinforce. I don't think that the community knows this, but we actually end up working very closely with one another as institutions, right? And I know exactly when I can soundboard something of Anna. We've got joint projects with Stellenbosch and UWC, and then also Wayne and Daniel and the staff at the UTF as well, right? And I know that where the TTO have added value, the UTF can definitely see where the TTO has added value, is what I'm saying, right? So, I think any conversation with any one of us is going to be valuable. And this is the thing, you need to just have the conversation soundboard, but then also learn how to take constructive critique and feedback, and then exercise those listening skills as well.
Of course. Well, thank you guys so much. It was great to get all of your perspectives. I'm being very conscious of your time. We're 6 minutes over. I'm going to allow you to jump off now and get on with your day. We really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. All of this was really invaluable. And if anyone in the audience has follow-on questions, I can forward them on to any of our guest speakers. So just email them to us. I'm going to ask Rodrigue to put everyone backstage, and you guys are welcome to jump off while I do our outro and speak about some of our events. Thank you all. Cool. So I really hope that all of you found that really valuable. I think it was a great session. And if any of you, like I said, if any of you have follow-ons, let me know. If any of you want to speak to our guest speakers today for a second session, we can try and organize something like that, or do another session on something in more detail. David, I know you had another question in the chat. I will try and get that to you over email. I just want to quickly run through our upcoming events. We do email these to you, so please keep a lookout. Our startup stories have been really interesting. And as Wayne mentioned, Immobizyme's incredible journey. They will be joining us for a startup story on the 13th of August, which I think that's next week. So all three of the founders will be telling their incredible side of the story. And we will be serving lunch as usual. So sign up on our Quicket. You can also find it on our website. We'll have another startup stories with BioNuclex on the 2nd of September. We'll be connecting everyone to the Cape Health Tech Connect event, as Sabri mentioned, in September. So we'll send out more information about that too. And then our Meet Your Co-Founder event, we've postponed to November to allow ourselves a little bit more time to bring in other ecosystems. We really want to connect scientists with business students or business alumni to experienced founders, to some people in computational science. So we're really trying to get a mixed group together so that we can have this complementary mix of people that might join forces. Awesome, but we'll send you reminders about all of this. And then last thing I wanted to mention is in 2 weeks, we'll have the second session of our funding theme, and we'll have a venture capital deep dive. So we'll be hearing from OneBio Venture Studio, the fund side of OneBio. Nick and Marco will actually both be joining. We'll have Francois Milan from Savant and Rowena Look from the Africa Health Ventures. So that's also going to be a really interesting session. Please join us for that. Stephen, I see you say law students as well. We will reach out to some law students for the Meet Your Co-Founder session. That is it for today. Thank you for joining us. I really enjoyed that. I hope you all did. Have a lovely Wednesday, and we will see you in 2 weeks. One last reminder, actually, I'm going to put the link for the feedback. Oh, that's the wrong link. 1 second. I'm putting the link for the feedback form in the chat. I will also send it to your email. Please complete that for us. Awesome. That's it for today. Thanks, guys.